So therefore, the question has to be asked, is the taxpayer getting value for money? And let's look at the Irish Greyhound Board. Figures which were presented over a period between 2007 and 2012. Now, the total turnover projection by the CEO, Mr. Neelan, back in 2007, in a strategic plan presented to the Minister at the time, was that by 2012, the total turnover would be 75 million from the 48 million back in 2007. And that he was confident of achieving it. The reality is something totally different. And if you look at 2007, the total figure was 48 million, 2008 was 44 million, 2009 32 million, 2010 24 million, 2011 24 million, 2012 19 million, a reduction of 60.4%. How can anyone have confidence in an organisation that is getting 10.8 million euro, half of which is coming from the taxpayers this year, and that they're losing, they're not even able to implement their own strategic plan. Now, I would like to ask the Minister in relation to the 2012 audited accounts of the IGB. They were presented to both yourself and Minister Coveney on the 12th of December last, as I understand it. When will they be published? I understand that they're due to go before Cabinet. And why is there a delay in publishing the 2012 accounts, given that we're now approaching the end of the second month of 2014? There are a number of alarming questions in relation to Stadia, both Limerick, that have been raised with you, Minister, and Dundalk. And I would like if you would expand on the record. I don't have the time to go into the queries as to the ringer situation in Dundalk, the audit that was carried out there, the manner in which the auditor's findings were not published by the board. In fact, the board, the IGB, published their own findings. The issue in relation to Limerick and the bend issue, or the distance in the track. You might expand on that particular issue as well, Minister, and the manner in which Limerick Greyhound Stadium, one of the best in the country, continues to lose substantial amounts of money on an annual basis. If you can provide us with an input in that as well. Can I also ask you, Minister, if you have full faith in the board members of the IGB, obviously Mr. Neelan, the former CEO, is now gone. And the destruction which has been carried out, in my view, over the last number of years, needs to be fully investigated. We're talking about taxpayers' money here. So I want to ask the question, have you full confidence in the board? Who will reappoint the CEO? Will it be the board who will reappoint the CEO, as has been the case heretofore? Or will the Department of Agriculture step in to appoint a new CEO? And if the latter is the answer, then it would point to me that in fact you don't have confidence in the board, Minister, and therefore, if that is the case, would you go as far as to call for the board to resign and a new board to be put in place? One of the genuine board members of the Irish Greyhound Board wrote to yourself, Minister, on the 19th of July last, outlining his major concerns, Mr. Brendan Moore, on the 19th of July. I have a copy of the letter here.
1 minute, sir.
And he raised a number of extremely pertinent questions. He went on to say that at the present moment, Bord na Gong is heavily indebted to a commercial bank. As the debt is not state guaranteed, the tracks are taken as security. The failure of Bord na Gong to identify and deal with a doomed business model for the last 5 years has placed the industry on the cusp of disaster. Confidence in the industry is at an all-time low. The board and executive have not dealt with these issues in a transparent and competent manner, leading to massive reputational damage at home and abroad. This is one of the IGB board members who's saying this. These are not my words. The indebtedness is in the region of 30 million euro, as I understand it. And I do believe that I don't have the answers to these questions. I'm not sure if you have the answers to these questions either, Minister. And if those answers are not available, I do think it is time that a full independent investigation is carried out. An independent audit is one thing. I do believe, given the nature of the monies involved, a full and transparent public independent investigation of the operations of IGB is now overdue, and I will call on you today, Minister, to provide that platform for that investigation, because this is an issue that will not go away. Taxpayers' money is called into question here, millions of euros worth of taxpayers' money, and if you look at the performance of the IGB since 2007, then it leaves an awful lot to be desired. And why are they refusing to meet the breeders, the Irish Greyhound Owners and Breeders Federation? They've refused to meet them. They've refused to meet them, and I have it here that there has been a refusal to meet the breeders. Why has that happened? Surely, if, as you say, Minister, and I agree with you, that if the greyhound racing is to survive, then all the parties must pull together. A unified approach, though, would appear to be unlikely, given that the board and indeed yourself, Minister, and Minister Coveney continue to exclude the owners.
Minister, the greyhound industry, as we know, is a very substantial employer. It's not up there yet with the horse racing industry in terms of funding or employment, but it is still substantial. It is concerning, though, that we see that breeding is down 40% and that there are a shortage of dogs for races at the moment. The latest estimates claim that almost 10,500 jobs depend on the industry and that these yield over 21 million in taxes to the Exchequer. The greyhound industry is funded through the Horse and Greyhound Fund, as we've heard, at a ratio of 80-20. That is to say that the horses get 80% and the dogs just 20%. And we would hope that the greyhound ratio would increase. It will be contributing more to the Exchequer now when the betting bill is enacted. The potential for the industry is huge. Already it's estimated that 40,000 tourists, as has been said, attended greyhound races last year. But I think there is a serious issue around the perception of the industry at the moment, and very serious questions around governance that need to be asked. The industry has modernised and made its image more sophisticated. The greyhounds, while attracting corporate clients and tourists, must also be supported to continue to provide the facilities and recreation it always has to its usual punters on small tracks all over the country. It's a very Irish sport and we're unique in this. For this very reason, the regulation and funding of it must be according to the very best practice. For this reason too, the Minister must look to the debts which the Irish Greyhound Board has run up in the building of its new track in Limerick. Minister, I've been in contact and I'd like to welcome representatives on behalf of the North Eastern and the Dublin Greyhound Members and Breeders Association to the gallery today. They're very welcome. And I've been talking to a number of people in the industry who have raised serious concerns, and there is that issue that the representatives of the industry have been looking for meetings with yourselves, Minister, and with the IGB, and they're telling me they're not forthcoming. So I'm hoping you'll be able to put that to bed today and tell us that you will have a meeting with them as soon as possible. There are serious issues around the debt on the IGB. There have been resignations from the organisation in recent years, lots of questions around that, serious questions about the rebuild of Limerick, for example, and the redesign of the first bend there in particular, and some of the legal issues that have pertained to that, injuries to animals, etc. I am also hearing that there is a sense that there's a huge amount of cronyism on the boards of the greyhound tracks, that the boards have been filled up with political cronies, which isn't necessarily the best way to go, that these people don't necessarily have the relevant expertise, and I'm hoping you might talk about that. But I think really one of the biggest issues I'm hearing is around the doping of dogs and the amount of using enhancers and drugs to enhance their performance, that really is dealing a death blow to the whole industry. In 2012, I understand that there were 6,000 samples taken from dogs, but up until January of this year, only 17 results of those tests have been published. There are also, I believe, there is a need for more independence of the control committee. That it would be independent of the IGB, and that the people would be absolutely clear that any kind of regime of doping will not be tolerated in the Irish greyhound industry. I would also call for the publication and the transparent publication of all the tests that have been done, and to do that forthwith. I know that there have recently been PAC hearings, and I note that you mentioned that in your speech, but you don't go into the detail around that. I would imagine that there's going to be a follow-up to the PAC hearings, the Public Accounts Committee hearings, and I'll be following up with my colleague Mary Lou MacDonald on that issue to make sure that we have full transparency around the financial issues relating to the IGB. I note as well, I'm led to believe that the tote figures, for example, are kept separate from the actual track accounts. That the tote itself over recent years has been the money generating operation, and that the tote is paid straight, it goes into the IGB itself, and the tracks themselves are finding it very difficult to maintain a day-to-day existence because of the cost of it. But on the tote as well, it has been noted in correspondence that has been said to me that there's a huge difference between the tote receipts that were projected and the tote receipts that have been seen. And even if you take into consideration the economic downturn and compare the tote and the tote figures for the horse racing industry to the greyhound industry, that in 2012 you have a 60.4% change in the tote compared to the horse racing industry of 14.8%. There seems to be something very strange going on here, Minister. So I think what we need to be saying here is that we've an industry which has very low morale among many of those ordinary punters involved in the industry. Can you reassure us that the Department is aware of the financial situation in Board-in-the-Gun and tell us if there is cause for concern, and when you will ask to make sure that the Board-in-the-Gun 2012 accounts are produced? There are 2 reports of investigations into the sport commissioned by Board-in-the-Gun which have not yet been published. Are you aware of the content of those reports, and can you reassure us that proper regulation of the breeding and racing of greyhounds is enforced and that compliance is the norm, and will you publish those reports? And what is the current status of the review of Board-in-the-Gun, which is to report at the end of the month? And what's your own feeling about the industry now, and do you have a vision for where it is going? Could you be I'd
like to welcome the Minister of State to the House. I know that many of the issues that I hear have already been raised, but it seems to me that on even the most cursory reading of the correspondence that has been circulated to a number of us, I'm not sure if it was all sides of the House, but certainly on this side of the House because they've been quoted, would raise very serious questions about the status and about the ongoing governance of the various boards that are set up. Now, I have to say that in the context of the correspondence, one of the reasons why we received this is that the allegation is that Ministers Hayes and Coveney have refused to engage with the greyhound owners. And in fact, in a letter that was sent in reply from one of the people involved, the quote was that the Minister is satisfied that the Board continues to discharge its statutory and other functions and obligations on an ongoing basis, and that for its part the Department continues to discharge all its monitoring responsibilities with regard to Board-in-the-Gun in accordance with legislation and with government policy in relation to commercial state bodies. Unfortunately, the sequel to that and the response to that is in the letter that you would have, or the letter that was sent to your colleague, Minister Coveney, is that my experience, this is the letter writer, is contrary to the views of the Minister of State, and regretfully he's left the board. Now, I'm not sure whether I'm able to name the individual concerned, but I just leave it as it is because I'm sure the Minister knows exactly who I'm talking about. He makes some very serious allegations, as indeed in further correspondence that was sent to you in July of last year from another individual who is involved in the greyhound industry. He talks about the political influence on the industry ensuring people are not appointed on merit, that poor and suspect decisions have been made and there must be accountability for the position the industry is now in. He does, however, go on to say, and I would agree, that the Irish greyhound industry has a lot of positives. It has a core of highly skilled suppliers of greyhound stock which deserve their industry to be run fairly and ensure it is viable for them to continue. Irish greyhound stock is renowned all over the world, and Ireland is accepted as the cradle of the best gene pools in the world. This reputation is at risk, he alleges, with the manner in which breeding and racing is regulated at present. He goes on to say that the problems in the greyhound industry are not new and are complex, but that you are running out of time to save this industry from collapse, that the culture of the industry needs to be changed and changed immediately. He would ask that you waste no time in carrying out an in-depth review, that the industry cannot be changed from within, and that the political nature of the industry must be removed. Integrity must be restored, as at present it is simply a buzzword. The industry at present is a charade due to failures to implement and failures to identify the requirements. The corporate governance and compliance duty is also failing. The morale of the staff and the confidence of the industry stakeholders have been lost. These are very serious allegations, Minister. Very serious allegations for what is a prime industry in this country, and I'm sure that you will be able to answer and respond to these allegations, because it seems, as I said at the very outset, that you haven't been engaging with these people and haven't been engaged with the greyhound industry. And again, you'll have an opportunity, I'm sure, to either refute that allegation or to clarify the situation in relation to it. There is another aspect, I don't know whether this has been raised as well, is that the internal auditor, in the context of the investigation of ringers running at Dundalk Stadium, which I know my colleague raised, that the internal auditor has since been paid off and has left the IGB. And the question is, how can a semi-state be allowed to spend taxpayers' money to remove a person doing their job correctly while continuing to employ the people that are in breach of the rules? Again, a very serious allegation that has been made. The question is raised in the letter, says that the treatment of the internal auditor and the head of compliance should be investigated. I think that more or less, there's much more involved, but one last final point. The 1958 Greyhound Industry Act states that minutes must be kept of all meetings of the board. The recording of board meetings is a standard governance issue. The minutes of the January 2013 board meeting omitted reference to important information, according to the letter writer, and that the February 2013 minutes acknowledge the fact. In May of last year, board meeting minutes have been changed to remove large sections of the record in relation to the Dundalk inquiry and the board members' reaction to a letter that the letter writer sent to the company's solicitors. Now, it doesn't give me any great pleasure to be putting these allegations and charges on the record, but obviously if the people involved, one of which is a former board member, have taken the time and effort to write very extensive letters. These weren't just 2 or 3 paragraphs long, these were several pages, both to you and to the Minister for Agriculture. At the very least, it raises questions that need to be answered.
Senator.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. Good afternoon, Minister. I was actually not going to speak because I thought today was greyhound and horses, but it's only greyhound. So I'll be very brief, Minister. I found your speech today, Minister, very comforting, but I was actually, none of us are in the mood for comforting because all the senators have spoken today. You know, we all know the allegations against Bord na Gán are very serious at the moment. I mean, what went on in the PAC last November, the Limerick scandal, you know, the misuse of taxpayers' money. And, you know, one of the reasons I want to stand up, Patrick Wall, who's chairman of Horse Sport Ireland, who has no place in today's speech, but they're getting 3 million from the taxpayer, 3 million from Horse Sport Ireland, when we have a vast number of children and adults alike competing at European level, Yet, you know, Bord na Gán is getting 10.8 million. Now, I'm not saying you know, the funding provided to Bord na Gán, we all want to support the greyhound industry, but not in the way it's been run at the moment. So, Minister, again, even though your speech was comforting, I'm really looking for you to get tough and get belt and braces, can hardly speak today, approach. And, you know, we can use words like corporate governance and, you know, how the executive is running, but it sounds to me like Senator O'Donnell is right, the whole board and executive committee needs to be cleaned out, because it just sounds like, you know yourself sitting there, it really doesn't sound good. And if it was you and me, if it was our company, we would have our sleeves rolled up. I mean, just take, I have a little company. We signed off on our accounts for 2013 yesterday. It's the 19th of February. We haven't signed off on 2012 Bord na Gán accounts yet. So that's a little private sector company, you know, who's turned over 20 million. So we're not, you know, we've lots of, you know, intricacies. You know, the accounts are not that easy. But how can we do it so quickly, and it takes you an extra year to sign off your accounts? But you have to say, because you're... Sorry? Okay, well, anyway, it's not good enough. Not good enough for you. Is there an internal audit committee? Has that been in place like there is in all the county councils? There is. Why were they not seeing... Like, why were they not waving a flag at the minister saying 30 million in debt? Why was nobody waving a flag before now? If Bord na Gán was a charity, take Rehab or take CRC, we'd be all over the front pages all of the time. Thank you, Minister.
And indeed, Minister, I have spent a good night myself inside the refurbished dog track inside in Limerick, be it at fundraisers or various different events. However, Minister, that particular dog track in Limerick lost 368,000 euros last year alone. And that kind of hemorrhaging cannot continue. You said in your speech, Minister, that you're conscious of the onerous responsibility that individuals take on when they are appointed to the board of a state body, and it's important that people on the board have the appropriate mix of skills to enable them to direct such an important industry. I'm not sure does the board here have the necessary skills to deal with this financial crisis that it's finding itself in. The model was fine, have these fantastic dog tracks when the Tiger was booming and everyone had plenty of money to spend, as Senator Landy was referred to, but times have certainly changed. And I think the crux of the matter comes down to the political appointments that are made to state boards. It's certainly a gripe of mine whereby every government seems to, when they come in, they clear out state boards, and if you're a party loyalist or you've done favours one way or the other, you get a grand cushy number on the board. Now, to me, that doesn't necessarily give someone the necessary skill set to be on a board. I think it's a crazy way to appoint any member. And in fact, one member of the board who canvassed for his position on the board and was duly appointed. He's a neighbour of mine, and he's a man of certainly the utmost integrity. He's made his concerns to do with the board very, very well known to you. I refer to a particular letter that's been referred to before by the Fianna Fáil senators, in that he says about other members of this politically appointed board. The political influence in the industry ensures people are not appointed on merit, and this policy has served the board Nagan very badly. He admitted himself he doesn't have the skills to tackle this indebtedness. And I put it to you, Minister, that indeed members of the board are out of their depth, that they don't know how to deal with it. This man, he became so frustrated with the goings on, and he's made it known to you. You know what I'm talking about, and you're aware of the facts. But he decided that he had no recourse to action, only to pull out and resign. Now, there's not many people who I have heard on state boards. They would hang in there with their fingernails for the few bob they get to go to meetings and whatever else perks are attached to it. But this man has put his integrity on the line. He said, no, he had enough, and he pulled out. And the situation that went on with the internal auditor is bizarre, to say the least. The fact that he was involved in the investigation of running ringers above in Dundalk, and that was brought to the attention of the board. And the two guys who were in charge of the investigation were shoved aside. Now, since it's happened, one of them is back to work as the CEO is gone, but the internal auditor has vanished. He's gone. He's been paid off and sent out to grass. I certainly smell a rat here, Minister, and I'm sure, I'm not the only one in this chamber that smells the same rat. And my question to you, Minister, is very, very simple. It's a very simple yes-no answer, and I hope I get a response today, is, are you satisfied with the way Board Nagan is being run? And do you have the full confidence in members of the board?
Senator Bradford.